Hey, Trailblazers, welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you at this time because this means that you are going through a breakthrough. So, let me introduce myself. We're going to get into this training and let me guide you through the foundation of what you are experiencing at this identity threshold. Yes, don't worry. We're going to get further into that. Don't worry in the training. So, I am Leanne Jameson. I am a women's empowerment leader. I'm a licensed psychotherapist of 20 years working with women. I'm also the founder of the Institute for Female Trailblazers. So, I have a background in psychology and executive leadership and holistic healing. And what my passion is, what I specialize in, is identity thresholds. And that is, like I said, we'll get into that further, but that in sum, this is the space in between who you have been functioning as and your next level of growth and expansion. So we're working in the in between. There are phases to that we're going to be going through. So I really help women navigate the phases of the identity threshold so that they can regain that clarity, the confidence, and the forward momentum necessary to create the impact in the world that they are truly meant for. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. And like I said, today we are going to be diving into the identity threshold and also this phase map for women who are expanding beyond their success, okay, who are expanding beyond their current identity. So, this is something that almost every single high capacity, high achieving, highly determined woman experiences throughout their career, throughout their life. And very few people actually name it. So here we are at some point in your life or your leadership journey, you begin to feel this subtle or sometimes really intense shift. The identities that built your success, and we'll go into them in the next training, actually. So there are 5 different identities that built your success. And again, this is all through my experience, what I have gathered, the information that I've gathered over 20 years of being in the field of psychology and leadership. So, I'm going to take you through the identity threshold phases, but also know that the next training is about the identities that are actually holding you up within these phases. Okay. So, just laying some of that foundation down for you. So, the identities that we'll talk about, and I'll just mention them here briefly. There's the capable one, the responsible one, the strong one, the high performer, the relatable one. All of these identities worked for you at some point. They helped you to build your career, your leadership, your reputation, your respect. Eventually, though, something began to change. And you may have noticed, or maybe this is something that you're noticing now, and that's why you are here, is that your motivation is dropping. Your goals are feeling like really hollow and unfulfilling. You may have this strange sense of like restlessness or like anxiety that you didn't have before. A lot of emotions start surfacing that you totally didn't expect. Or you have this sense that you've outgrown something that you once worked really hard to build. This happened to me in leadership when I was working in corporate. I worked really hard to climb that corporate ladder. I put in a lot of late nights. I did all the extras. I went to all the extra trainings, and it really created some like dissonance. I was really frustrated and confused when I hit my level of what I would have considered success, and many people called success on the outside. I had the 6+ figure salary. I had an amazing boss. I really aligned with the mission that the corporation that I worked for had engaged in throughout their long career, or their history. So, anyways, on the outside, it looked perfect, right? On the inside, it was frustrating. It was sad. It was anxiety provoking. It was confusing. We'll go over all of that, right? These are all within the stages. So, when this happens, we often assume, oh, okay, well, I'm just burned out. I just need a break. I just need to pause. Like, I just need, something. I'm just burned out. Or something's wrong. I'm losing my drive. What's happening? Or we might go to, I'm failing. I am failing. I have made it to the top and I'm failing, right? But what I want to show you today is this: nothing is wrong with you. You are simply standing at what I call the identity threshold. So, within the identity threshold, we are going to be going through the different phases. And this framework that I've created is grounded in what research has shown for decades, that transitions follow recognizable stages, that identity reorganizes during periods of growth, and that our nervous system capacity actually determines how well we navigate this expansion. So, when we name, first of all, what is actually happening as the identity threshold, and then we're able to identify what phase we're in, and then even further, being able to identify what identity is keeping us within that phase, we actually stop pathologizing the process. We let go of the shame, we let go of the failure, we let go of the confusion, and we start leading ourselves through it. And that's exactly what the identity threshold framework helps women do. Okay, so let me back up for a second. What is an identity threshold? So, at an identity threshold, this is the space between who you were and who you're becoming. So, it's this crossing point where old identities start dissolving, where our motivation actually starts reorganizing, our nervous system recalibrates, and a new level of leadership begins forming. So, this moment has been studied across several areas of research through identity development, through psychological transitions, through motivation science, through stress physiology, and through nervous system regulation. So, all of these fields actually point to the same insight, that human development happens through phases of identity reorganization. And that is exactly what this framework maps. So, let me show you, and I will have this for you available as well. Let me show you just the simple framework, and then we're going to go through it together. So let me see. I can share. There we go. So, this is the identity threshold framework, okay? Every high capacity, like I was saying, woman crosses multiple identity thresholds throughout her lifetime. So, this framework that we've created here at the Institute for Female Trailblazers, it actually maps where you are in the crossing so that you have the language and the structure when life, business, and leadership start to reorganize. So, we'll go over this again in more detail. The first phase is dissonance. This is oftentimes when motivation drops, old goals feel really hollow, success feels less meaningful. And this is actually the signal of evolution. Then we move into deconstruction, right? This is the second phase, and this is where former identities shed. Grief and uncertainty surface, right? You feel this call inward, not to collapse, but just to reflect inward and to shed. We then move into capacity. That's the third phase. And through capacity, expansion has to stabilize. The nervous system is recalibrating. This is all you will see through all of this up until the fifth phase. It's all an internal process. So, in capacity, the internal safety increases. This has to happen, or else we will collapse. We will go back into self sabotaging behaviors, over functioning, those old methods and those old identities. So, that's capacity. Then the fourth phase is integration. This is where self inhabits decisions. We just act from this place. Embodiment is quiet, it's not performative, right? Leadership becomes very embodied. So this isn't the arriving, this is actually the embodiment. This is who I am and who I have become. Then, like I said, state phases 1 through 1 through 4 are all internal processes. So nobody even sees you really going through this. I mean, there may be some symptoms, right? You might have some anxiety, you might have some depression, right? If we really want to pathologize it and look at the symptoms. But this is really an internal process until we get to phase 5. This is expression and legacy. And this is where our leadership expands and culture is influenced, and our work truly reflects who we are, who we have become. This is the evolution through you. So, in every crossing, a woman actually redefines how she leads, how she lives, how she relates, and identity thresholds map her inner evolution. So, that is the identity threshold framework that we are working with here at the Institute for Female Trailblazers. Um, and let's go a little bit more in depth with each of these, okay? So, when we're looking at the first phase, like I was saying, this dissonance, that's phase 1, this is the signal of evolution. So, this is the very first sign that you are approaching the identity threshold. Externally, again, this is where it's like everything looks really successful, right? You have everybody's just like, oh man, she's made it, and you feel that. Well, you used to feel that, but internally something has begun to shift, right? This is oftentimes where women in this phase say, like, I'm doing all the things, I feel empty though, and I feel frustrated, I feel unfulfilled. Or they might be saying, I should feel grateful, right? But something isn't right. That was me. Like, both of those were me. But I definitely, so many of us women that I have worked with over my 20 years, right, feel this. They say this, whether it's externally, like saying it, or just internally saying it to themselves, right? I felt like, oh, the worst person. I'm like, I should be grateful. Why can't I be grateful? Something's wrong with me, right? Something is wrong with me. I knew that something was wrong with me, but I was using it in a way of like shame, right? So this is the phase that you might notice that motivation dropping, the goals are feeling hollow, unfulfilled. There might be some strange restlessness, like you know that you're meant to move, but you just don't know where, and it's just doesn't have anywhere to go. That energy doesn't know where to go. And you also may notice less excitement about the things that once really inspired you and drove you. Right? This is where a lot of times you're like, "Oh my gosh, I must be depressed. Like something's not right." We know something's not right. We just didn't have the understanding or the words for it. So, psychology actually describes this as dissonance. This is the discomfort that occurs when our current behaviors or identities are no longer aligned with who we are becoming, that next level, right? It's actually one of the primary catalysts for growth because it is so uncomfortable. In motivation science, have also found that when goals no longer align with the inner, deeper psychological needs like autonomy or meaning or authentic connection, that motivation just naturally declines. So, what many women interpret as burnout is actually the first signal that their identity is evolving. So, the reframe here during phase 1, during this dissonance, is really about recognizing that dissonance is not failure, it's actually a sign of evolution. Okay, so that's the first phase. Phase 2 is the deconstruction. Talk about uncomfortable. So, this is the shedding phase. So, if the dissonance continues, the next phase can begin, the deconstruction. This is where the identities that built your life, they actually begin to loosen, right? Emotionally, this phase can feel very intense, right? At this point, women often experience a lot of grief about who they used to be, longing for who they used to be, confusion about it. They will feel very uncertain about what comes next, right? This is where the confusion comes in. And for someone who is high achieving and highly driven, highly successful, having that uncertainty is baffling because we've always had a clear vision. So, during this phase, we will often experience emotional waves that feel unfamiliar, like I was just saying, and a strong pull inward to just sort of like hibernate and reflect. So, this stage has really been studied extensively in transition psychology. Research describes a period called the neutral zone. This is the space between an old identity ending and a new one stabilizing, right? There's a gap. And this phase often feels disorienting because the structure that once organized your life is now dissolving. The important truth here is this, okay? When you have that call, that feel inward, right? This isn't about collapsing. This is about reflecting and shedding. It's very intentional. Just like a snake sheds its skin before it grows, the old identity must be released before the new one can stabilize. So, welcome to phase 2 of deconstruction. Then we continue to move into phase 3. This is capacity. This is the nervous system recalibration. So, this is the phase where many of us women mistakenly try to like push harder. We try to do like we try to engage in old patterns that used to help move us forward, but we find that that's not working anymore, right? Because expansion isn't just psychological, it's actually physiological. In this phase where we're building capacity, your nervous system has to expand its capacity to hold that next level of leadership, right? This includes holding greater visibility, greater responsibility, more influence, more truth, right? So there's a lot of more here, and we start questioning whether we can hold it. And our nervous system is like, nope, we can't. It's our work to train and teach the nervous system that it is safe to expand. So, neuroscience and trauma research actually describes something that we call the window of tolerance. This is the zone where our nervous system is able to stay regulated, to stay flexible, to stay responsive. And when our capacity is stretched beyond that window, we experience what we identify as overwhelm, anxiety, or shutdown. Any of that sound familiar? So, in this phase, the work is not strategy. It is not to push harder. It is not to strategize your way out of it. The work is actually stabilization. Your nervous system is recalibrating so it can safely hold the next level of your identity, which is why women in this phase often feel the need for more spaciousness. They feel the need for more boundaries or clearer boundaries. They also notice that they are longing for deeper regulation practices, whether that's your, exercise routine that becomes really important to you, or your relaxation routine, or yoga or meditation, right? Your regulation practices. You are getting pulled to them, right? This is not regression. This is capacity building so that we can really launch to that next phase. So, phase 4 is integration. This is inhabiting of the new identity. So at some point, the new identity begins to stabilize, and this is the integration that gets to happen. Interestingly, this phase often feels a lot quieter than what women expected. You sort of just like wake up one day and you're like, wait, this is just who I am. Like, this is what I do, right? Because instead of performing leadership, you actually begin inhabiting it. So you might notice things like decisions becoming way clearer, way quicker. You stop over explaining yourself. Your boundaries just become embodied, right? There's no internal struggle. There's no thinking about it. It's just like, these are my boundaries. Like, that's it. Your presence becomes steadier. So identity researchers describe an identity as it's like an evolving life narrative, a story, right? This is the story we tell ourselves about who we are and where we are going. So this new version of you and the integration phase, right? It becomes just what happens, right? It's integration happens when that story actually reorganizes. This new version of yourself begins to feel so natural and just easy and light. It's not something you are trying to become, it's something that you simply are. So, as you saw for phases 1 through 4, very internal. Again, some people might see some of the symptoms on the outside, but you really have an internal process. And that leads us to the fifth phase, the final phase. Phase 5 is expression and legacy. This is the evolution through you. The final phase is where the transformation actually begins moving outward. Your leadership expands, your voice becomes clearer, your work begins reflecting who you are authentically. So, psychologists refer to this as purpose driven well being, where growth and meaning and contribution become central to life, right? This is where the future self that once felt really distant begins to be fully expressed as itself, right? Because you are integrated. This is how you're showing up. So your identity evolution actually starts beginning to influence your family more, your community, your work, your culture, your legacy. And the most powerful thing about this phase is that you're no longer trying to prove yourself. You are simply expressing yourself. So, those are the 5 phases. The 5 phase map for women who are expanding. That's the identity threshold framework. So, the question I want you to sit with today is very simple. Where are you right now in the identity threshold? Are you feeling the first signs of dissonance? Are you shedding, right? Are you in the shedding phase of like the deconstruction process? Are you building your new capacity, or are you actually beginning to integrate a new version of yourself? Because once you understand the phase you're in, everything begins to make more sense. So, if you've been feeling restless, if you've been feeling uncertain, if you've been feeling emotional, or like something inside of you is reorganizing, I want you to hear this very clearly. You are not failing. You are not broken. You are evolving. And the more we understand the phases of identity expansion, the more we can move through them with clarity, with steadiness, with leadership. And that is exactly the work I guide women through. So I would love to hear from you. Respond back to this, drop a comment, drop an email. Which phase do you think you're in right now? Because the moment we name the phase, we can begin navigating the crossing. So, as always, live your legacy, change the world. Can't wait to see you on the other side.